of Established Runs NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here with Mike Gallagher. We have just a 3-game slate, so we are going to breeze through this information. We have a 3-game slate with 4 of the 6 teams on back-to-backs. 2 of them didn't even submit injury reports. So basically, we just throw our hands up and say, who knows? We can talk intelligently through what might be the case. But Mike, how are you doing on this nice Thursday afternoon?
Doing good. No Homer Bush background. I correctly predicted that Daniel Tice would not start, among other things. And shout out to Airplane Mode. Gonna miss some time. I took this picture.
Who's now in health and safety protocols with every other Chicago Bull.
And I hope Rick Carlisle is okay, man. Like when I listen to all his press conferences, that man costs a lot. So I hope he's okay.
It's a scary situation out there trying to play basketball during a pandemic.
Kyra Lewis just tore his ACL.
Okay. Well, Kyra Lewis not on the slate. We'll talk about him.
Let's go.
We'll talk about him later.
All
right. Let's keep it on track for tonight's 3-game slate so we can get in and out and wrap this show up quick. In terms of questionable tags, we've got Hassan Whiteside, who did not play last night for Utah. They submitted an injury report. Mike Conley was not on it, which is a little bit surprising because Mike Conley has rested plenty of back-to-backs this year. Mm-hmm. I would say that thankfully this is the first – all the games are close tonight in terms of timing. But this is the first game on the slate, 7 o'clock Eastern. So I'm like, because you got the Embiid situation on a back-to-back, which Philadelphia also submitted their injury report, and Embiid is not on it. Mm-hmm. But you never know with Embiid and back-to-backs and Doc Rivers and the Philadelphia staff. Thankfully, this is the first game of the night, so we should get clarity. If Whiteside is out, we saw potentially increased ceiling for Rudy Gobert, but he got into foul trouble last night.
Yep. Yeah, Mike Conley, he has played in back-to-back before, even with pretty normal minutes, 31 minutes in this previous instance, and then only needed 24 last night. So blowout would definitely think he's out there. So I do kind of buy that report. Like you said, I don't really buy fully the Embiid stuff. As you mentioned, he was hobbling around. I certainly think he plays, but Tobias wasn't initially listed with the injury report at first. Tyrese Maxey wasn't originally. Like, there's a lot of times
we've seen a lot of stuff with the Sixers.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of stuff with the Sixers. So basically, just be prepared that stuff could change a lot. Obviously, if Embiid did sit, we've seen this story before. Andre Drummond becomes a good play, even in a tough matchup. All these different things. Now, I will say this: last time Philadelphia played Utah, it was without Embiid. And they went super small against Utah. They did not play Drummond very much. I think he played 12 minutes in total that game, if my memory serves me.
Perfect.
So they went really small. And so that's something to be aware of. Just like if this is like a last-minute scramble or whatever, it'll be an interesting decision point on where to put Drummond's minutes, because we have a very specific example that they did not go small. They had all the other pieces that they would theoretically have tonight. In this scenario, they did start Drummond in that game. And the game went very,
we got a Grizzlies report just now.
Okay.
And nothing surprising. Just Kyle Anderson questionable.
Okay.
So
well, that is an improvement to their situation as well. So let's talk about that, because Kyle Anderson questionable. I have him currently projected out. Didn't know, just was keeping along the lines of what we've had before with Brandon Clark and Zaire Williams and Kyle Anderson all kind of out of late. If he is able to return, certainly lowers the minute ceiling of guys like Dylan Brooks and Desmond Bane a little bit. Also, some of these minutes that we saw from like Killian Tilly, Santi Aldama, Xavier Tillman, they all become very risky if Kyle Anderson is able to come back. I kind of think they'll take it slow, but I mean, Memphis is trying to win as many of these conference games as they can while they're playing without Ja, who just went into health and safety protocols as well.
Yeah, I believe this is the 3rd time he's had a back injury in his career, so something to keep an eye on. But he's been out for a bit, and they originally called him as questionable, which isn't too out of the ordinary. But yeah, I think you nailed it. Certainly, you'd see Tillman be affected a lot, Aldama a little bit. I think Aldama still probably has maybe the inside track. Killian Tilly would certainly go away.
Yeah, Tilly was a surprise play last night. I don't know if it was matchup specific or not, but he took some of Aldama and Tillman's minutes last night. I think basically Aldama is probably the favorite, followed by Tillman and then Tilly in terms of still hanging around in the rotation. But all of those guys, not DFS relevant. And then Jaron Jackson's ceiling comes down a little bit. We've seen them really go heavy on him. 34 minutes last night. He's been able to avoid foul trouble, which is usually his biggest bugaboo in terms of playing time. And we've seen Steven Adams' minutes increase as a result as well. So I think if Kyle Anderson did play, you'd have a little bit more risk on Steven Adams, on Jaron Jackson Jr., kind of all these bigs. And it all funnels into the starting rotation because generally Memphis likes to play kind of deeper, flatter rotations.
The old 10-man. 10-man Taylor.
Old 10-man with low 30s for most of the starters. It's usually pretty consistent. So if they had a player that they felt was capable of soaking up those minutes like Kyle Anderson, it could hurt these other guys a little bit from where they're projected currently. Let's stick with that game, actually. Let's talk about the Lakers. Whenever we do these shows and the Lakers are up, it seems like we're always talking about them because they always list their main guys on the injury report. LeBron James, Anthony Davis are probable once again. I don't think it's a big deal. I think the big question mark around the Lakers is like, who do they start? They played really well starting Avery Bradley last game after having this big discussion about how they were going to start Dwight Howard. And so it wasn't Dwight Howard last game against the Celtics, against a team that starts two bigger players with Robert Williams and Al Horford. Now they play Memphis, starts two bigger players, Jaron Jackson Jr. and Steven Adams. What do you think the Lakers do tonight? I'm leaning towards Bradley just because they played so well defensively last game.
Yeah, so you asked me that this morning, and I was like, my first was thinking like, oh no, AD's not going to want to guard Steven Adams.
Yeah.
But then this is before I checked out the Vogel stuff, and he was saying that they want to like give this a look. So
yeah,
you know, the old kind of going back to like Chimezie Metu and saying you want like a sample size of this lineup. So
yeah,
like I feel pretty confident that it's going to be the same lineup, and he was really, really impressed. He said they didn't want to do double teams and kind of just be, you know, man to manny and kind of go back to basics with this defense. And you know, if you're changing your defensive schemes and you're making different approaches and in those directions, you don't want to be shuffling your lineups.
Yeah.
So I think it makes a lot of sense that they would start kind of the same way here again.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Keldon Johnson and the Spurs. Keldon Johnson is doubtful today. Been moved from doubtful to out, right? He's not playing.
He's not expected to play. Second doubtful.
Yeah. So doubtful towards out, somewhere in between those two. But Devin Vassell, who's been listed as questionable, I believe.
He's technically doubtful, but he went through shoot around.
Okay. Technically doubtful, went through shoot around. So game time decision situation for Vassell. We have him currently not projected in, and without him, you know, the Spurs of late, their backup kind of wing rotations have been very funky. We've seen Josh Primo play well enough to earn more of a role, and that's come at the expense of Lonnie Walker. It's come at the expense of Keita Bates-Diop, which really was more around the time McDermott came back. Bates-Diop kind of faded off. Bates-Diop started, I shouldn't say started the second half because Keldon got hurt first thing in the second half. Yeah. But came in for Keldon, played 15 and a half second half minutes in that game. And the amazing thing to me, because I was doing the minutes today, Lonnie Walker played 3 second half minutes without Keldon Johnson and without Devin Vassell. 3. So, like Lonnie Walker, we've seen him get up to 30. We've seen him go down to 14, 15. The minutes variance on these Spurs backups is really, really high if they are playing without Vassell and Keldon tonight. I think Bates-Diop starts. I think he's good for like somewhere between 18 to 30. I think there's a wide range there. I think McDermott's probably good for 22 to 30. I think there's kind of a wider range there. And then I think Lonnie is like literally like 14 to like 28. Like I think the range is super, super wide. And on these 3-game slates, getting those guys right can make a really big difference. So how do you see things shaking out for the Spurs tonight?
Yeah, so matchup's important to note here because it was against Julius Randle when they did really kind of go into Keita Bates-Diop there. So that, as you said, they really got away from even, I think you said, 10 minutes it was for McDermott second half?
11 minutes for McDermott and 3 for Walker in the second half.
There you go. Yeah, so, I mean, different matchup, right? Like, I don't think they're really going to be worried about Jeff Green and Aaron Gordon as much, which is, like I said to you this morning, I was like, maybe Lonnie starts because he started that first stint that Doug McDermott missed. It was like 3 games or whatever with the knee injury. So like maybe they go back to that just to get him going or something like that because I don't think they need the size with KBD in there. Does get a revenge game for him too. But yeah, like you said, it's kind of a mess. I think McDermott's minutes should be pretty safe here. But the upside definitely concerning for reasons you just said. And yeah, it's pretty crazy that like these other guys are kind of fringy, but
yeah, I mean, just because Lonnie's got such good usage and such good rates that when he does get minutes, there's the opportunity there. You also suggested to me You could see maybe Thaddeus Young get some power forward minutes. That didn't even play last game. They went straight to Eubanks as the straight backup. We've seen them split those two. We've seen them play one game with one guy, one game with the other guy. Very difficult situation to project. It doesn't really matter a lot for DFS, but that's another out that they'd have, certainly because the Nuggets do play bigger. They tend to play like true, 4s and 5s all the time. So maybe we see some Thaddeus Young tonight too. But from a DFS perspective, I think it's going to be hard to tell because I think you're going to get the starting lineup of Pirtle, KBD, McDermott, White, Murray, and I don't think you're going to know a lot about Lonnie, Thad, Forbes, what those minutes look like. I think it's going to be hot hand.
Yeah, again, just like we were saying, this is the first time Kelvin's missing a game, so maybe you kind of pull a new card out. That's kind of what I was thinking. Like maybe Thaddeus plays, but as we said, 287 and 287 minutes have been as a center, so. Yeah, it would be a new wrinkle, but got to keep your eyes peeled for a new situation. Okay,
the other two teams that we have not, we talked about the Grizzlies a little bit. The other team that we have not talked about on the slate is a team that's playing San Antonio, the Denver Nuggets. They played an overtime game last night. This is their 4th game in 6 nights to end a road trip, back to back. This is like a dreadful situation. The overtime game, last game of a road trip, back to back, like all of it combining for itself is just really an uphill battle for the Nuggets. And they're not a deep roster, right? Like we've talked about all the injuries, all the health and safety protocols, guards that they've lost, and coming off of having to play Barton 42 minutes when he was illness in a game time decision, Aaron Gordon 43, Jokic 37, Monty Morris, who they talked about wanting to try to limit at 36. We don't have an injury report for them. They also don't have a lot of guys that if somebody missed, they don't have like guys that they can really plug in. So my big thing with the Nuggets tonight is just, do you think this is a potential situation where they actively try to manage the minutes of their main guys? And if so, I think San Antonio -1.5 is really interesting. If they're trying to keep, Morris back down to like 29 to 30, Aaron Gordon back down to like 32, 33. Will Barton back down to like 32, 33 instead of 35, 36. Jokic back down to 32, 33. Because they have to manage these guys at some point. It's just they're asking a lot.
Yeah, Jokic was probably yesterday for a forearm contusion, I believe. So that's pretty minor. Will Barton was ill, had a late warm-up, looked pretty good. Despite being ill. He's ill Barton after all. But you mentioned I think that it would make sense to dial him back, certainly with all the points you made about the road trip, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it should be all right. Malone has really talked about I'm kind of screwed. I got to go 8-man rotation. He runs 8 guys and mixes in some Zeke Naji and Devin Reed.
There's not much to do, and it's not like the guys that they're missing are coming are guys that can take over a lot. Like they're missing Austin Rivers, right? Like how much can he really take on? The guys that they could take off a lot of offensive responsibility are gone for the year. And Michael Porter Jr. and we'll see when Jamal Murray, if he comes back, but mostly gone for the year. So it's a really tough spot. Would not be surprised. Jokic is one of the most durable players in the NBA, and he shocks me every year in these back-to-back situations or playoffs or whatever, like that year after he played 50 minutes a game where he still came back and played well the next game. He always shocks me on this stuff, but it just wouldn't surprise me if at some point there's a letdown game during this really condensed stretch.
Yep. And just a fun note for you, I wanted to share with Will. We're about to wrap it up, but Willie Green said their game plan was to stay home and let Jokic beat them. Pretty solid.
Yeah, well,
I must say
you get what you want.
Yep.
Sometimes be careful what you ask for. 17 for 23 from the field. The guy's incredible. I mean, just absolutely incredible, remarkable player.
11 points in overtime, if I remember. It's insane.
Yeah, and should he was 17 for 21 at one point, and one of the shots was a contested fall away game winner at the buzzer. So he was 17 of 20 outside of a game winner. Just incredible, and that rimmed in and out. So that'll do it for today's injury report show. There's not really a lot to go through today, unfortunately, because so many teams are in back-to-backs. So if you're looking for the premium content to analyze all this information, get on over to Established Run, hit that subscribe button, join Mike and I behind the paywall, 5 o'clock Eastern today, as we do establish a show and break down all this from a DFS perspective. If you're not going to join us behind the paywall, please continue to click the like button on these videos, continue to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and do all the things that help us continue to provide this great free content for you. We will be back tomorrow, myself and Mike, at 2 o'clock Eastern to go over a big slate of games for the injury report. Good luck tonight in all your games, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow.